So today we're going to be taking a look at the new Varro reference subwoofer from ELAC, and it has a few new tricks up its sleeve. At first glance, you'll notice the hex surround, which looks very different. We'll get into that later. It's using bash amplification. You get app control, which allows you to control up to 8 subwoofers, built-in wireless connectivity for up to 3 subs. It also has 8 parametric EQ filter banks, which I think is actually the most important feature of all this. We'll get into that later as well. And it has auto EQ, which aims to adjust the sound of the subwoofer to accommodate your room. I should mention that ELAC did provide these free for the purpose of this review, and I was paid to make some internal video for them, kind of the nice B-roll that you see here. If you think that's something that might bias my opinion, I'll leave that for you to decide. Now, starting with the visual, taking a look at this, it's a pretty small enclosure. It's a sealed subwoofer, which a lot of people will like. I think it has a very nice satin black finish, and it looks premium. You can tell by looking at it, it doesn't look like an ordinary cheap subwoofer. It also has an attractive trim ring, which I believe is one of ELAC's signature aesthetics. Now, we can't ignore the hex surround, which looks very different than your typical subwoofer. And the idea behind it is that at maximum excursion, the surround tends to flex and deform anyway. And they say that the hex surround allows it to perform more linearly, meaning it doesn't twist or turn, it just moves in and out like it's supposed to. And typically at the edge of excursion, it requires more effort for a subwoofer to be able to play that extra few millimeters, and the hex surround is supposed to help with that as well. The cone itself is a dual sandwich aluminum cone woofer, and it has an impressive 2.5-inch voice coil, which helps it stay cool and gives it more control of the motor structure. If you want to cover up that nice looking driver, then you can, and they have this basic grille, which looks pretty plain in my opinion, but it works. Turning to the back, you'll see this pretty cool looking heatsink for the bash amplifier and what I consider pretty nice terminals. There's an LED on the bottom, which is not actually very visible, but you have the option to turn it off if you don't want it. Kind of not sure why it's there, but it's there. Now, for some of the stuff that you don't see inside, it is using 1 3/8 inch MDF, which is thicker. It's normal to see about a 3/4 inch MDF for most speaker enclosures. I think what they've done here is they've kind of doubled up on it to make it so there's less flex in the enclosure itself, and that's useful for subwoofers. The bash amplification on the back is interesting in that it's a Class AB amplifier, but it has the efficiency of a Class D. Don't ask me exactly how all that works. I'm not an expert when it comes to amplifiers, but that's what they say. They claim 500 watts RMS for the 10-inch version and 700 watts RMS for the 12-inch version. You also get double that for the peak power, so 1,000 for the 10-inch and 1,400 for the 12. But of course, peak wattage is not as important as the RMS rating, which is the standard. You'll also notice a USB port in the back for firmware updates and an Ethernet port for custom integrators. Not something that I personally use, but if you are a professional, then you may find that feature useful. Now, it also has a 12-volt trigger, which I do find useful because if you've ever had a subwoofer that turns on automatically, sometimes there's not enough signal if you're playing at low volume to tell the amplifier to turn on. And so you're like, where's my bass at? With this, there's an actual wire that you can plug directly from your AVR or processor to your subwoofers, and it'll make sure to turn them on every time. This does use Bluetooth Low Energy to connect to your smartphone for that app control that I'll talk about in a second. Another interesting feature on the Varro reference line is that they have built-in wireless control using their Air X2 transmitter. I should mention that that's a $200 add-on for the transmitter, but it can control up to 3 subwoofers wirelessly. So as far as the app control, this is, I think, one of the coolest things about this line of subwoofers is their app works with the entire line of Varro subs, starting with the premium, the reference, and their dual sub options. The awesome thing is that their app can control up to 8 subwoofers at one time. And one feature that I thought is very useful is that you can actually control the volume with a single slider and control the volume for all of the subs connected to this app. Now, other apps allow you to control the volume of the subs independently, which this also does. But sometimes you just want to be able to turn the subs down altogether and not have to use the on-screen menu, and this app allows you to do that. Now, you also have your normal phase and delay and different presets built into this app, as well as many other apps that you see here. One feature that they have is called their auto EQ feature, which does measurements of the subwoofer in different positions and tries to take out the room from the equation. I might not be the right person to review that, particular feature because I have my Magic Beans app that's coming out very shortly that kind of does something that many would believe competes with their method. So I will leave a link in the description to their website so you can take a look at the features for yourself. All I can say is that my favorite feature is the 8 PEQ setting. So this is gonna get real nerdy. Basically what that allows you to do is it gives you 8 bands of parametric EQ to really adjust the sound of the subwoofer. Most of the other subwoofers I've seen either give you no control of PEQs, and some of the others give you about 3 bands of PEQ. This gives you 8, and that's a significant difference. If you're an advanced user and you have REW and a U mic, you can figure out your target curves and load them directly into this app. And so that's pretty awesome. But if you're even more advanced, you can use something like multi-sub optimizer to optimize for multiple seats. So if you have a few of these subs, you'll need to be able to enter the levels, set the phase, and the PEQs for each sub independently. And with this, you're gonna be able to do that through this app without the use of something like a mini DSP, which you'd normally have to buy. So I think that's a killer feature on this. Many people might gloss over that, but to me, that's what differentiates these subwoofers from the others in this category. What I'm really hoping for is eventually to maybe integrate my Magic Bean software so we can import directly into these subwoofers because they are obviously capable with their DSP, but we'll have to wait and see. So let's take a quick look at how they measure and how they sound. So first, here are their claimed specs. Here it says that the 12-inch has an anechoic response of 17 Hz to 150 Hz, an in-room frequency response from 14 Hz to 150 Hz, and a max SPL of 111 dB. For the 10-inch, they claim an anechoic response of 18 Hz to 150, an in-room response of 15 Hz to 150, and a max SPL of 108 dB. So I took some near field in-room measurements, very close to subwoofer, so I'm not getting that room gain that you typically expect. And what I'm noticing is that their specs are pretty close. I'm measuring an F3 or -3 dB point of about 17-ish, 17 to 18 Hertz, which is right in line with what they've claimed. I would also venture to guess that they use the -10 dB point to calculate the in-room response, and I am seeing somewhere around that 14 dB range for the -10 dB point. So again, my measurements match what they've said in their specs. So as far as listening impressions, what I typically look for is something that has a flat, neutral response because that makes it easier to blend with your main speakers. I look for bass extension, which is something that you can't really add after the fact. It's either the sub can play as low as it needs to or it cannot. And so these play very low. I'm happy about that. I also look for a lack of distortion at reference levels. So reference is 0 dB. Most of the time I'm not listening that loud, and most people don't as well. If I'm listening loud, I'm listening at -10 dB from reference. And so at that level, I didn't hear any distortion whatsoever. It played clean, played smooth, and I'm happy with this overall sound quality. So I don't do any CEA, CTA 2010 measurements, which looks at how much distortion it has at certain frequencies and at certain SPL. It's just not something that I am capable of doing where I live. But all I can say is I didn't hear any distortion, played loud, played clean, and I'm happy about that. So the price of $12.99 for the 10-inch version and $14.99 for the 12-inch version, it's kind of in the ballpark. I would say maybe in the upper end of things. And I would say with regards to its performance and the quality, the build quality, the way it looks, I think it's not unreasonable. One of its direct competitors would be something like the SVS SB3000, which I also have, and you can see that they're about similar in size. The SB3000 comes in at $10.99 or $11.99 if you choose their gloss finish. In some ways, I actually prefer the satin finish on these. SB3000 is also sealed. It uses a 13-inch driver, and they claim 800 watts RMS. They claim an anechoic response of down to 18 Hertz, which I've measured. One of the features it's missing is it doesn't have that wireless connectivity option that these have built in, and it only has 3 PEQ settings. If you choose to use something like multi-sub optimizer, you'll probably need something like a mini DSP to make that work. ELAC also has the premium, which is their less expensive version in this Varro lineup, and they have their dual subwoofer option, which I've yet to review. Kind of curious about that one actually. Overall, I think that these are very good subs. I'm happy to see a manufacturer that I trust in the game of subwoofers. You know, more options, more competition is better for everyone. So that's it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. That's it. Take care. Bye-bye.